I've enjoyed making videos on high-profile, high-energy, highly successful baseball players. Rickey Henderson. Talked about him for an hour and 17 minutes because his career was just that fun and interesting. Alex Rodriguez, maybe the most recognizable player in baseball to this day. We're gonna truly change the pace here with this one though. This time, I'm going to be talking about a guy who played just 4 MLB games almost 80 years ago. Because I think this story is the one I've been most excited to talk about. Ever. This is the guy.
Who is this guy?
I'll tell you who he is. He's the man who best channels what I think of baseball. Please bear with me. This is a really good story. Let him represent what sports mean to so many people. Baseball to me is so beautiful and so intricate, and I love it to death. Cue the montage to prove it. See now why someone would want to be a part of that? Just the feeling of being in and around baseball is amazing. When I was young, I distinctly remember how cool it would feel to just find a baseball arcade kind of game even, like on a vacation. No matter how well I was playing at it, I loved immersing myself in the world of baseball. For both the good and the bad that came with it, that was a lot of my childhood. And I want to introduce you to someone who I believe represents the love of the game feel the way I see it. He's someone you have more than likely never heard of, and more than likely never seen a photo of. All I ask is that you just give me a fair chance to show you why you should care about a guy this unknown and spent this little time in the big leagues. But before I try to make this big of an argument to you, can I just say hi for a sec? My name's Mike. If you like what you see here today, please consider dropping a like or subscribing to the channel. That stuff really does help out, more than I can really put into words. Now, meet Lee Riley, the person who I see the most as a baseball guy out of anyone I've ever talked about. Wait, is that just a drawing of a bat as the logo on the jersey? Are you serious? I could make a cooler looking jersey design in 10 seconds on Photoshop using any random clip art. Lee was from Omaha, Nebraska, a really cool city that has a Raising Cane's in it. May or may not have lost a pair of AirPods in that general area too. Not when he was growing up. He was born in 1906, but still. Lee Riley had an insanely long and insanely successful minor league career. The more I read about it, the more new things jump off the page to me. This is admittedly one of the most obscure topics I've ever taken on, but the collection of information about this guy and his career is so fascinating and such a product of its time that my goal is to put you into this guy's world for just a little bit. At age 20, he made his minor league debut for a team called the Lincoln Lynx in Lincoln, Nebraska. Like a tiny URL link. The reason I mention this was that he was 7.1 years younger than the average player around him at that level. Probably a league of grizzled old World War I veterans with typhoid fever or scurvy or something. You know, olden times things. So he clearly had budding talent, and it showed, even though he only played just a few games there. They also thought he was really hot. One newspaper described him as, quote, the picture of health with his ruddy complexion and even distribution of 180 pounds over a 6-foot frame. So, this guy, but in the 1920s. Peak male specimen. His breakout minor league baseball stop was a year later in Pueblo, Colorado for the Pueblo Braves. The Pueblo Braves have absolutely zero connection to the Braves you see in Major League Baseball. They have no connection to any big league team at all. Neither did the Lincoln Lynx. That's why I didn't mention any big league team in mentioning Lee Riley's baseball affiliations. If you played minor league ball when Lee was coming up, it wasn't for much money, it was because you loved it. Lee Riley sure loved it, and was pretty darn good in it. One of his years in Pueblo, he hit 27 triples. I didn't even know that was possible. Only one person has done that in MLB since 1894. It's not Benji Molina, are you crazy? The Red Dead Redemption 2 house building scene is like a generation's worth of years after 1894. No one has done it in MLB since 1912. This is what new music sounded like in 1912. There were soon reports that the then Philadelphia A's, who were managed by this man who'd wear a suit outside in the dugout at 100-degree heat, were going to sign Lee. But that never came to pass. He would stay a minor leaguer. For a while. A few years later, the St. Louis Cardinals went and bought his contract. Not to be in the big leagues, though. One sports writer then described him as, quote, a great stick man when describing the move. Just to show you how long ago this was. He didn't make it with the Cardinals, or the Dodgers, or the Pirates, or the A's, all of whom took chances on him throughout his time. He was player manager for 2 minor league teams, but from 1927 to 1942, he just grinded out his adult life in the minors before throwing in the towel. Or at least it looked like he was gonna throw in the towel. For 1943, he instead got a job in a factory making supplies for the US military for World War II. Oh, I know what that is. It's the thing Le'Veon Bell's from.
Before heading out to the front, you need to select the division, soldier.
In the meantime, playing for the company baseball team, he had to have been the best guy there, because his long minor league career to that point was incredible. 2,142 hits. That's how many he racked up during that minor league stretch we just went through the mud of. The exact same amount of hits Placido Polanco had in Major League Baseball, for context, and 4 more hits than Jose Reyes had in MLB. It's also more hits than Mike Piazza, Alfonso Soriano, Paul O'Neill, and Joe Mauer had. He hit 230 home runs, too. More than Troy Tulowitzki, Don Mattingly, Jason Bay, and Todd Frazier hit in the majors. He was one of the very best hitters minor league baseball had to offer. What all that wasn't was enough to get a big league team to ever take a chance on him throughout this 15-year stretch of minor league play. 15 years. Dedicating 15 years to something in general, let alone minor league baseball, is really admirable. Starting to show his age though, he hit just .204 in 1942 down in the minors. When 1943 rolled around, money and contract disputes started to become too big a problem, and he sat out the 1943 season, working that World War II job, as I told you about a little bit ago. Reasonable people would assume that by this point, he would have just given up, and it would all be over.
Yo, I think you're done for.
And then suddenly, on the second day of the 1944 MLB season, Lee Riley stepped into the batter's box for the Philadelphia Phillies. The real Philadelphia Phillies, in Major League Baseball.
This is where the fun begins.
He was 37 years old. The current St. Louis Cardinals manager is 35 years old. He finally got the chance to be a big leaguer. Saying World War II probably helped his chances of making the team is like saying John Morant is probably good at dunking, but who cares? Lee became a Major League Baseball player. What I'm now going to do is show you a representation of how his MLB career went through this montage of my friend trying to use a bat to make contact with the uplink ball on Black Ops 3.
I'm too conceited to let all my people take shots in the dark when it's out my permission. The Scotty the spliff and I'm rolling the leads on the dash with a fossil can bring the ignition. 2-tone, big bass, big bang, hit chase.
4 games, 12 at-bats, 1 hit. That was it. No need for any advanced baseball stats in this one. Riley's first game and his last game were just 11 days apart. The Phillies would send him back to the minors after that, and he'd never return. One of the most accomplished minor league hitters of all time had just 12 at-bats and 1 hit in the majors. So this guy right here is named Tommy Lasorda. He managed the Dodgers from 1976 to 1996. Before that, he was a left-handed pitcher that Riley managed down in the minors after taking player managing up again after the Phillies sent him back down. Lee summarized his struggles to Tommy like this: "Know why I couldn't hit in the major leagues? Because I couldn't hit left-handed pitchers. If you'd been there, I'd have been a star." He stayed a minor league player 5 years after the Phillies sent him down, and a manager for those same 5, plus 3 more. Soon after, the Phillies went through a round of layoffs, and Lee was included in that. He genuinely thought his future could have led to being a major league manager for the Phillies. It ended with him throwing away every last thing he had from his baseball career. Everything he'd saved from his long and successful life in baseball was just gone. That was his choice. And yes, I said his baseball life was successful. If you make it to the bigs at all, you succeeded at baseball. If you rack up another 2,000 minor league hits and 230 plus home runs down there, you were really good. I'm not so sure he truly realized this in his heart after he gave up baseball for the first few years. He opened up and managed what was basically a convenience store after his career, and in the years that followed, descended into some drinking troubles. It doesn't take much to guess that that drinking problem had at least something to do with feeling like a failure. For a lifelong minor leaguer to only play 4 games in the show, never making it back as a player or a manager like he dreamed to, and leaving the sport on someone else's terms, not his own, that had to hurt. Afterwards, his buddies helped him right the ship and hooked him up with a janitor job at a high school to try to get him back on the right path. Like when Mike Scioscia had to push around barrels of toxic waste at a nuclear power plant. Obviously figuring out that their new janitor was a really good ball player in his day, the school, wisely, offered Lee the job to coach their baseball team. He agreed. On one condition, they let him wear his janitor clothes as the coach. Seriously.
Damn, man, that's the hardest thing I ever heard.
Why? Because he wanted to make a point. When he stepped on the field with his players, he commanded the same respect no matter what he was wearing. I think he finally realized that his career deserved respect. No matter what happened before or after his big league stint, the man was a baseball success. He felt he had earned that respect. I 100% agree. I also truly admire the message he wanted to send, because you really have to love baseball to agree to coach it wearing a janitor outfit. Baseball is a game of life lessons. He wanted to pass some of them along. He made the absolute most of his circumstances in that regard, a lesson he made sure to pass down to his children. Alright, we're gonna talk for a few minutes about Lee Riley's kids, now that we bring them up. Trust me, this is relevant. 2 of them went on to have undeniable sports success. Lee Riley Jr. played pro football for 7 years in the NFL as a defensive back. He suited up for the Detroit Lions, Philadelphia Eagles, New York Giants, and New York Titans. You can see the New York Titans today under their new identity, the New York Jets. He also had another son, who I am also super excited to talk about. Everyone, let me introduce you to Pat Riley. Pat Riley is the coolest old guy in the world. He is also one of the greatest basketball coaches and greatest sports minds to ever live. He helped build the Los Angeles Lakers, New York Knicks, and Miami Heat into the best versions of themselves imaginable. All 3 are now some of the most recognizable sports teams in America, and Pat Riley's contributions absolutely helped make that possible. He's won 9 NBA championships, 1 as a player, 1 as an assistant coach, 2 as a team president, 5 as a head coach. When Pat was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame, this was his immediate reaction.
My head in my hands, and I thought about one man, my father.
He always speaks very emotionally about his father. While not a perfect man by any means, his father was a man who made the most of situations. On the field, he had a long and fruitful career, even if it didn't translate in the majors. Fueled by heartbreak, he turned those lessons into a very powerful message he commanded as a high school baseball coach. In a way that will probably never leave my brain, I respect it that much. And when Lee didn't have the money to go see Pat play college basketball, he made the most of his resources and availability by driving up to the top of the highest hill he could and listening to his son play on the radio. Pat Riley believes that there was a new mindset instilled in him by the lessons of his father's baseball career. Once you make it, you can't settle. If you accomplish your dream, it shouldn't end there. And how you do that is you make the most of what you have. As a coach, that was the smartest thing Pat Riley ever did. I'm about to describe Pat Riley's coaching philosophy in terms so simple, yet so rare in how coaches manage their teams. He designed systems to fit his personnel, not making personnel fit into his system. In other words, making the most of what he had. With the Lakers, he coached the flashiest team in NBA history composed of high-flying stars. When he went to the Knicks, he didn't have that. So he threw out what worked in LA and crafted a system of rough and tumble blue-collar basketball, because that's what that team could succeed at. In Miami, he managed to find this guy who once quote-tweeted one of our tweets. That same guy also happened to be a crafty, smart, and lightning-quick explosive guard that Pat astutely realized he could build around. See? Making the most of what you got. Pat Riley has done it for decades. Lee Riley taught him those lessons before. Pat Riley is the living embodiment of his father's lessons. I said at the very beginning of this video that Lee Riley is the man who best channels what I think of baseball. He stuck with it his whole life. He saw highs, he saw lows. He did everything he could to stay in the game. He found ways to teach lessons through it and make an impact on other people through the game. And he made the most of a game where you will fail. A lot. It took time to accept that, but it resonates with me, it resonates with his son, and I hope it resonates with you. I love baseball because I see it as much more than a game. I see deep beauty in it. I see fun, weird little quirks. I see really important life lessons I wouldn't have gotten without it. Stories like Lee's embody that, and I think his story best represents what I think about baseball. Whether or not you've played it, seen it, anything, I hope you can see baseball the way I do for just this one moment through this man's story.